Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at the first story from chapter 42 of the Road to Latin textbook. Now this story is called De Acie Triplici et De Agmine. So before we dive too far into it, like I always tell you, if you want more resources on this story, the chapter, anything like that, feel free to check out my website. You can find vocab lists there, vocab games, grammar notes, videos, practice stuff, anything you'd really need. So if you want to kind of branch out from the textbook and just get more resources to help you through it, feel free to check it out. Now, before we dive into the story, again, we will start with a little bit of grammar. Since it's a new chapter, I'll explain sort of the basics to you. But before we even do that, with any story, I always tell you the first thing you have to do is make sure you have the chapter vocab under control. It's really difficult to understand what's going on if you just don't know what the words mean. So no matter how good you might be at the Latin, it's really hard if you just don't have the vocab. So always start there, right? Either make your own list and practice it. You can take mine, whatever it is that you need. But you want to make sure that you are really comfortable with the vocab so that you have a shot of understanding what the story is all about. Okay. The other thing I'd recommend you do is read the story aloud. If you can find a partner in class, classmate, whoever it is, read the story to them, work on your speaking, work on your pronunciation, have them read it back to you so that you can work on your listening skills. This way together, you're both kind of turning on those parts of your brain. You don't want to just read this in your head. Whenever you're dealing with language, you want to bring it to life. Speak it. You don't want it to be just kind of stuck in only one part of your brain. So always try that, right? It'll help you out and you'll realize that the more you do it, the better you're going to get. It's sort of speaking and your pronunciation, but also to help you understand the Latin better, right? It's another way to access the language. You don't want to shut that off. Now, the last thing I'd tell you to do is do the read and reread method. You've heard me say this a lot. When you read through the story, the first thing you should do is read through it start to finish. Write down a list as you go of any problem areas you have. It might be vocab, it might be grammar, whatever it is, write it all down. When you get to the end of the story, you want to take a look at your list. If it was vocab, that's really easy, right? Just look the words up and you'll be fine. If it's grammar, it's probably something from this chapter's grammar where maybe you have to go and look at sort of your grammar notes or one of the videos I posted, whatever it is. But one way or another, you just want to make sure that you feel really comfortable with it. And kind of shore up those problem areas on your list, and then go back and do it again, right? On the second read through, you do the same thing, and it might take you 2, 3, 4, however many times, but your list should get shorter and shorter, or smaller and smaller rather, and you're looking for a point where you can read through this entire story, start to finish, you understand everything, and you don't have any list, nothing to write down. That's how you know you're ready to move on. Okay, so if you haven't done that, pause the video, go work on it, and come back and we'll go the rest of the video doing a little bit of grammar and then translating the story together. Okay, so here's the grammar for this chapter. Like I said, a quick overview. It's fifth declension nouns. So it's actually very similar to chapter 41 we just did, where we did fourth declension nouns. Now you're just getting another group. So you want to remember declension's just a fancy word for group, right? Groups of nouns that use the same endings. That's all it is. So you've seen first, second, third, and fourth so far. This is the last one called a fifth declension noun. Okay, so the way you know what noun a declension belongs to is by looking at the genitive singular, right? So that second part of the noun listed in the dictionary entry, right? That's where you look. So that genitive singular, if it's an AE, it's going to be a first declension noun. That would be like puella, puellae, f dot girl, right? The AE in puellae tells you it's a first declension noun. The long I would be second declension, like ideficium. The IS will be third, like miles militis. And we just saw last chapter that the fourth declension is that long US, like domus domus, okay? For fifth declension nouns, the way you can tell is the genitive singular will be an EI. Like an example would be res rei, right? That EI in the genitive singular tells you it's a fifth declension noun. In general, fifth declension nouns tend to be feminine, right? But otherwise, you just use them like any other noun. We keep saying this when you learn new nouns or new declensions. There's no difference in the cases. You still have nominative, genitive, dative, all these things. You're just using a slightly different, set of endings, okay? But if you know how to quickly identify what declension or group your noun belongs to, it's really easy to figure out what the endings are. You can look at a chart, and you can kind of start piecing it all together, okay? So that's the big part of the grammar. I'd encourage you to go look it up. Either in the textbook or on my website. Just look it over, make sure you feel pretty good about it. But as we go through the story, you're going to see this in action. It'll just become easier to understand. So the story starts like this, and we're talking about the Roman army still. Okay, so you have exercitus Romanus, ad proelium instructus acies appellebatur. So the Roman army, the exercitus Romanus, right? The Roman army, having been drawn up, right, instructus, right, having been drawn up for battle, ad proelium. So when it was drawn up for battle, it was called acies, or it was called a battle line, right? So the word acies, meaning a battle line, is a specific word used when you're talking about a Roman army that's kind of drawn up for battle, right? They're not necessarily marching, but they're already ready to fight, okay? Then you have Acies Caesarus, Acies Triplex Appellebatur. So the battle line of Caesar was called, Appellebatur was called the Acies Triplex, right? The triple battle line. Okay, and you're going to see there's kind of 3 levels to it. That's why they call it that, okay? Acies Triplex Complures Legiones Habebat. So the triple battle line, the Acies Triplex, it had Complures Legiones, right? It had many legions, okay? Then you have omnis legio in decem cohortes dividebatur. So all legions, right, or every legion, you might say, omnis legio, every legion dividebatur, right, was divided into decem cohortes, right, into 10 cohorts. So every legion gets subdivided into cohorts, okay? Then you have ai cohortes ad prolium paratae hoc modo instruebantur. Okay, so these cohorts, right, the different parts of the legion, these cohorts having been prepared for battle, right, so paratae ad prolium, having been prepared for battle, they were drawn up, instruebantur, right, they were drawn up or arranged, you might even say, in this way, hoc modo, right, and you're about to see how they were drawn up, okay? You have prima acies, quattuor cohortes habeban. So the first battle line, the prima acies, right, that first part of the battle line had 4 cohorts, right, quattuor cohortes. Milites primae aciae gerebat pila quae primo impetu in hostes miteban. Okay, so the soldiers of that first battle line, right? So the milites primae aciae, so the soldiers of the first battle line, they were carrying, carrying is probably going to do it, right? They were carrying gereban, the pila. They were carrying pila, right, which is a plural form of pilum. It's javelins, is really what they are. They were carrying pila, which were sent miteban, meaning they were thrown into the enemy in hostes in the first attack, right? So primo impetu. So the idea is these men in the first part of the battle line, when the enemy would charge, they're throwing the pila, right? That famous javelin that we mentioned in previous chapters, okay? Then you continue, and you have secunda acies, tres cohortes habebat. So the second battle line had 3 cohorts, right? Tres cohortes. Ai cohortes, saipe primae aciae auxilio mitebantur. Okay, so these cohorts, right, and that second line, they were often sent, right, mitebator, saipe, they were often sent, and here you have that double dative for the help, auxilio, for the help of the first line, rather, primae aciae, right? So they were often sent as help, you might say, or for help for the first line. So when the first line gets in trouble, you send in the second line, okay? Then you have tertia acies, quoque tres cohortes habeba. So the third battle line also had 3 cohorts, which makes sense, right? 3, 3, and 4 makes 10, okay? Tertia acies vel primam aciem vel secundam aciem magno in periculo iuvare potera. Okay, so the third battle line was able, poterat, right? It was able to help, iuvare, it's just a complementary infinitive. So it was able to help the second battle line and the first, right? So it was able to help either, you might say, well, so either the first line or the second line. And they would do this magno in pericula, right? In great danger. So when there's a lot of danger, you could send in that third battle line, okay? Now you keep going. You have milites, qui proxime conscripti erant, rei militaris periti non erant in tertia aciae conlocabantur. Okay? So the milites, the soldiers, okay? The soldiers who had been enlisted or conscripted, you might say, right? Conscripti erat means they're kind of enlisted. So they were enlisted proxime, last, meaning like most recently, you might even say, but last. So the soldiers who had been enlisted last, they were not experienced, right? So non erant periti, they were not experienced for the affair of the military, you might say, for things of the military, rei militaris, right? So they were not skilled or experienced in the affairs of the military. So in other words, they're very new. Okay, so those men, conlocabantur, they were placed in tertia aciae, in the third battle line, right? So those men who are really kind of new and fresh, you put them in the third battle line. That way they can kind of watch and learn, right? Gain experience. Then you have interdum acies triplex circiter octigentos pedes pertineba. Okay, so interdum, sometimes the third battle line, the aciae, rather Acies Triplici, right, the third battle line, or the three battle line, extended, pertinebat, it extended for about Kirkite, around octingentos pedes, around 800 feet. So this is part of the grammar as well, that's sort of accusative of extent of space, sometimes you say it. But here, you're talking about the Acies Triplici, so that triple battle line. It could stretch pretty far, right? So it says sometimes about 800 paces, right? 800 feet. Then you have Acies legionum sex veteranarum, quam caesar in ripis axonae instruxerat circite mille passus pertinuit, rather. Okay, so the battle line of 6 veteran legions, right? Legionum veteranarum, and the sex there is 6. So the battle line of 6 veteran legions, which Caesar had drawn up or had arranged on the Ripis Axonae, on the banks of the Axona River, and this is talking about the Gallic Wars, right? So the battle line that he drew up extended around 1,000 paces, mille passus pertinuit. So it's saying it could go a very long way, right? A very long distance, sometimes this triple battle line, depending on what the Romans needed to do, okay? Then you have the next paragraph. So you have exercitus Romanus iter faciens agmen appellebator. So we're kind of shifting gears here, not from a fighting line, but marching. So you have the Roman army, an exercitus Romanus, right? A Roman army, faciens iter, making a journey, right? Marching is kind of the idea, was called an agmen, okay? So which means like column, basically. So when they're making a journey, they're called the agmen, which is a column. Then you have aestate caesaris milites ex hibernis educti iter multa milia passuum in fines hostium faciebant. Okay? So aestate means in the summer, right? So in the summertime, the soldiers of Caesar, caesaris milites, right, having been let out, educti, having been let out from winter quarters, ex hibernis, right? So when the winter's over and it's kind of springtime and getting close to summer, they're let out, right? They're marching out. So having been let out, they iter faciebant is your main verb here. They made a journey, right? And it's a journey of many thousand paces, you might say, for many thousand of paces, many thousands of steps, right, into the borders, the fines hostium of the enemy. So Caesar's soldiers, right, when they're let out, they would march for thousands, right, of paces, right? They could go very far, is kind of the idea. Gallia longe aberat et multi dies consumebantur. Okay, so Gaul was far away, aberat longe, right? It was far away, and many days, multi dies, consumebantur, were consumed. So this march of going into Gaul, right, took a long time. It took many days to march there. It's a really, it's a big area. It's modern day France, basically, right? So it took them a long time to get there. Okay, then you have eorum dierum ordo agmine sic constituebatur. Okay, so thus, or seek, right? Thus, the order of the column, the ordo agminis, rather, the order of the column of these days, eorum dierum, meaning in the days of Caesar, was thus constituted, right? Established, right? It kind of went like this, in this way. It kind of was set up, right, in the days of Caesar. And you have inter singulas legiones erat magnus numerus impedimentorum, itaque legiones auxilium intersedare non potuerunt. Okay? So this is how the sort of marching column went. Okay, so between singular legions or individual legions, there was a magnus numerus, a great number of baggage, impedimentorum, right? So the baggage train. They would put that in between the legions, right, in the middle of the legions. And so the legiones, the legions, they had not been able, non potuerant, right? They had not been able to give help, right? Dare auxilium, inter se, between themselves. So since they have these big baggage trains, it was kind of a bulky thing. And when they're marching, they wouldn't necessarily be able to reinforce themselves, right? So you can imagine a big, long, drawn-out army. And you have to remember, they're not just marching with soldiers. You got to have the baggage, the food, all the stuff needs to go with them, right? So they stretch this line out a long ways. So marching is always when the Roman army is kind of at the greatest risk of being attacked, okay? Then we keep going. And you have si autem legiones hostibus apropinquabant et periculum erat maximum agmen se aliter habebat. Okay, so if, however, the legions were approaching enemies, right, apropinquabant hostibus, if they were approaching enemies or the enemy, and the danger was great, you might even say if there was very great danger, periculum erat maximum, the column otherwise held itself, right? So habebat se. So in other words, it held together unless they're approaching, right, an enemy. So otherwise, it was all good, right? Held together unless they're approaching the enemy, then you'd have to break apart. Okay. Then you have veteranae legiones in primo agmine conlocabantur. Okay. So in the first part of the column, right, that first column, right, in primo agmine, in the first column, the veteran legions, veteranae legiones, right, the veteran legions were placed, conlocabantur. So the veterans are put in that first part of the column. Okay. Then you have post eas impedimenta totius exercitus conlocabantur. So after them, the baggage of the entire army, right, totius exercitus, the entire army was placed. So you want your veterans in front, and they're kind of leading the charge, and you put the impedimenta, right, all the baggage behind them where it's probably safest. Okay. Then you have dende reliquae legiones quae proxime conscriptae erant, agmen claudebant, et impedimentis praesidio erant. Okay? So you put the veteran columns, the baggage comes after them, and then you have dende next, right? So next, the other legions, or the rest of the legions, right? The reliquae legiones, the remaining legions, the legions which had been conscripted, right? Conscriptae erant, had been conscripted proxime, last. They claudebant agmen, they closed the column, meaning they're at the end. So even when they're marching, you always put those new guys in the back because you're afraid of, like, getting attacked from the front, basically, right? They closed off the agmen. Okay, and they were the guardians, right, or for the baggage, impedimentis praesidio, right? They were the guardian for the baggage. They protect the baggage. So you put these newly recruited men back there, and they're to keep the baggage safe for everyone. Okay, then you end with this. We have quotidie milites castra muniebant. Okay, so every day or daily, the soldiers, they fortified, right, muniebant, they fortified a camp, a castra. So at the end of the day's march, you would pause and build a camp, this fortification to keep everyone safe. Okay. Then you have itaque totum diem iter facere non potera. Right. So they were not able to make a journey, right, to march, basically, iter facere, to make a journey for the entire day. Totum diem, there's your accusative. So they can't march the entire day. They need to pause and give time to actually build their fort. So then you continue. You have iter quindecem millium passuum erat illis diebus idoneum. Okay, so a journey of 50,000 paces, right? Quindecem millium passuum, 50,000 paces was idoneum, was suitable in those days, illis diebus, right? So in those days of Caesar, you're aiming for that long of a journey, 50,000 paces, right? So however many miles that might end up being. Okay, but they had a set amount you wanted to march. Then you have quod si Caesar in hostes repentinum impetum facere voluit, paucos dies magna itinera fecit. So because if Caesar, right, voluit, if he wanted to make an attack, facere impetum, right, if he wanted to make a sudden attack, rather, a repentinum impetum, right, a sudden attack on the enemies, he made, fecit, magna itinera, he made great journeys for a few days, paucos dies. So if he's in real hurry, they would do a lot of marches to get there faster. That sort of forced quick march is sort of a staple of Caesar. He's able to move his men very quickly when he needs to. Okay. Then we end with this line. You have magnis itineribus, Caesar paucis diebus ad hostium castra subito pervenire poterat. So with great journeys, magnis itineribus, with these great journeys, Caesar was able, right, poterat, he was able to suddenly arrive, subito pervenire, right, to suddenly arrive at the camp of the enemy, ad hostium castra, in a few days, paucis diebus. So this is really a staple of Caesar, being able to show up unexpected very quickly. When the enemy thinks they know where he is, he uses these forced marches to get where he needs to go faster than anyone anticipated. Okay, so this story is an interesting one. It's continuing our look at the Roman army and giving you a sense of how they march, how they fight, all these different things. If you want to learn more about it, there's a bunch of great resources you could use about the Roman army, their marching column. You can see it all over the place. I think Invicta made a video recently that does a great job of showing it. I'll try to link them in the video if I can. But there's a lot of things you can find on YouTube or just looking it up, right? And you should. It would be a really good idea to kind of dive into how the Roman army works because it's pretty complicated and the logistics of it are impressive, right? Being able to get thousands and thousands of men along with all their baggage, the equipment, the food from point A to point B, it's an impressive feat. Okay. If you have any questions at all, put them in the comments below. I'm happy to help. Anything with the translation, just let me know. But otherwise, like I always tell you, keep at it, keep practicing. The more you do it, the easier it should get. And